What's up, Laker fans? Welcome to the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius, and we're about halfway through this very strange Lakers preseason entirely on the road. We've had like one game in 9 days. And D, you have a piece going up on Silver Screen and Roll that everyone should check out that hits a couple of topics. And one of them is the Lakers having a certain type of player archetype. They're young, but they project to be in the rotation or very close to it in Max Christie and Dalton Knecht. And so talk to me about what you mean about this sort of player type that Lakers haven't had much of the last few years.
Yeah, it's interesting, Pete. I was thinking about the roster and things that I've liked and things that I haven't liked through 3 preseason games. And one of the things that I've liked and that's intrigued me is the Max and Knecht duo. And not necessarily how they've been playing with each other, but them as an archetype of young wings and perimeter players who have good positional size, who are athletic, who are coachable. But it's interesting, and this is what I talk about in my post, relying on young players is often fraught with hazards. Young players, they make mistakes. And a lot of times, if young players show a certain amount of proclivity to be good, you often over rely on them. And then you have to live with the mistakes that come with them being young players. But an interesting thing with the Lakers is that they have the potential to slot them into a right-sized role where they can hopefully minimize the mistakes while also optimizing and getting the benefit of what it means to have young wing players, which is like athleticism and a certain amount of verve and positional size, especially with these two, like a coachability, like I mentioned earlier, in which they will do the things that the coaches are asking them to do. And they have all of the tools in order to be able to do those things. And we were talking a little bit before we started to record. And this idea of the young wing is, especially like one with good size, just isn't one the Lakers have had on their roster in several seasons. You would need to go back to before the AD trade, really. Like, I think the guy who would be closest to this that was on the title team would be like Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah.
But even Kuz was like a 3-4.
What do you mean? Let me interject here. What's the difference between a wing and a forward in your mind? For example, we were talking about Rui, and you were like, Rui isn't really a wing. And I agree mostly and disagree. I have sort of, because of this problem, developed a small wing, big wing category. Yes. And so I'd put Rui more in the big wing / big type category. But how do you distinguish it?
Rui's an interesting test case to me because he, to me, doesn't have a lot of the like fluidity and like he's got on-ball skill, but it's not like a ton of like shiftiness and shot creation. Like, so I look at old school guards being like guys who handle the ball, can set up the offense, even combo guard types like the Jeff Hornacek and Joe Dumars types, the guys who could sort of like still initiate the offense if you wanted them to. Famously, so Michael Cooper just went into the Hall of Fame. Michael Cooper played some backup point guard for the Lakers. He was a guard. And there's a reason why when you and I were coming up, there was a thing called like guard skills, and you taught these dudes guard skills, and there was a certain mentality that came with that. And forwards, to me, Pete, were always more of the guys who did not handle the ball as much, who were scorers and were more finishers. And the differentiation between a small forward and a power forward was like the small forward was usually more of the scoring forward, and the power forward was usually more of the defensive, rugged forward.
Sort of the second big man out there in a lot of ways.
And then as the game started to evolve, there was more of the combo forward, and it was the guy who could do like a little bit of both, and he could score some, but if you needed him to rebound, he could rebound some. And then there was a whole other delineation of the point forward type, right? Which was famously like Scottie Pippen was the guy who comes to mind first, but even a guy like Larry Bird, he would bring up the ball sometimes, he would act like a point guard, but was forward sized. I think the wing position is more like the point forward type of guy. He's the guy who has some guard skills and some forward skills. But to me, the difference between like a big wing and a small wing is almost like Max to me isn't a big wing. He's more of like a normal sized or like a smaller wing. And wings to me, Pete, don't always have that initiation responsibility, right? Where it's like you are the sort of player who is just like, oh, we're giving you the ball and you're going to be the offensive initiator. That's why it's like the players like LeBron, I put them in their own. They're over here on the side. They do too many different things. Like we call them wings because they're wing sized, but to me, I'm more thinking skill set than I am like a size, if that makes sense.
And I also think there's a distinction between if you're talking about offense or defense. Like for me, the top line item would be a wing guards the perimeter naturally, where a forward may have some more problems with that. Forward may be more of a backline type of defender.
That's a great distinction, and it's one of the reasons why I have trouble classifying Rui as a wing, because there is, to me, a natural sort of grace and fluidity that comes with perimeter play that Rui does not always have. He's just not as fluid, as graceful, and an athlete. He is more of a power player. Mm-hmm. And to me, that lends itself more to being classically a forward. And so I look at Knecht and I look at Max. And one of the reasons why I slot them into this wing category as well is because they're basically going to have very little, and they should have very little, offensive initiation responsibility. They are going to be finishers, and they are going to be guys who are in the corner and offensively and running off picks. And if they run a ball screen, that's fine. I think especially for Knecht, because he did that way more in college. But just this idea of being young with positional size and athleticism, that's just not something the Lakers have done. Famously, last season, they would, or for 2 seasons actually, maybe even more, they'd play guards in that spot. I remember you basically pulling your hair out, and Pat Bev said, use me the way I'm supposed to be used. Like, you got me out here guarding.
We were such a strange team, D. We were such a strange team, man. Like, that did so many unconventional things it's like, just do the thing that 29 other teams would do in this situation, and you'll be in a better spot.
So I heard Jovan talking about this idea the other day on his podcast, and he was talking about Max, who started in place of Austin. And Max did not look out of place at all in the starting lineup. His skill set's different than Austin's, obviously, and D'Lo's got enough offensive versatility to be like, oh, Austin's not here, fine, just give me the ball and I'll be a point guard again. And that's the beauty, I think, of having 2 sort of combo guards, the way that Austin and D'Lo can play point guard, but can work off of the ball as well. But Max looked totally comfortable being basically just a good-sized shooting guard who didn't have to handle the ball a bunch. He got a couple of spot-up threes. He ran the lane in transition. He gets a couple of cuts per game. Right? He defended Dame, and great. It's just like, you're doing wing things out here. And it made me think, like, when was the last time the Lakers had a dude like this? Just competent, two-way play. Doesn't have to do a ton offensively, but can do his job. And then Max goes to the bench and in comes Knecht. And it's just like, oh, look, you're even bigger. And you've got a little bit more on your plate offensively. You've got a few more tools in your bag offensively, but he's competing defensively too. He's crashing the offensive glass. They both have skill sets and a lot to their game that translates immediately to playing winning basketball. And it was just something where I'm just like, look at these two. And when was the last time the Lakers had multiple guys like this on their roster, where it's just like, oh, look at you. Good size, forward size, wing size. We're not asking you to be LeBron and initiate the offense the way that like Brandon Ingram was going to develop into. And it's just an archetype. I'm like, I miss this.
It's nice.
And so I wanted to call it out.
An important type of player to have on the team. When we were talking in preseason about what we were looking for in the preseason, right before it, one of the things that we zeroed in on were the guys that have been in the gym for the longest amount of time, who are in the best shape, who are ready to hit the ground running. And those two were characters within that. I would say one unifying factor that they have that has been just a breath of fresh air is they can both rebound.
Yes.
Like Dalton went 5 for 16 the other day. A lot of his shots, he's currently shooting 21% from three. He's 5 for 24 from three. And there's no frustration really with him kind of amongst fans or anything, in part because he's contributing in other areas. He got 8 rebounds in that game. A lot of it for me is he needs to turn his shot selection off of expert mode for a little while. Let's take a break here. I have a lot of things to say about Dalton when we come back. One thing I'd hoped to see early on, D, was I've had this sort of bittersweet feeling about Knecht where it's like, oh, that guy can really score. And then a realization that I don't even expect that this will be resolved by the end of the year, which is why he's likely to be a bench player as a rookie. But the realization that he might not be able to defend at the level that I want him to, despite his immense scoring talents. And one thing I wanted to see in the preseason was like, can I find a path? Can I see things? Usually when a guy has weaknesses, you have to be like, okay, what can you do? And then is there a way to get you to do the thing that you are capable at as often as possible, while getting you to do the things that you're not as capable at as infrequently as possible? And we've seen, and with Dalton, I've seen that. The thing I'm excited about is I think he's got potential as a low man. He has, for a shooter especially, unusual leaping ability off of 2 feet in a standstill. And so there have been a couple of plays. Now, don't confuse this with me saying that he is good at this right now. He's not. He's late. He'll overrun his angles. He's certainly trying. And I love his motor. That's one thing that him and Max both have in common, is that they go in ways that we really need our young role players to provide that for this team. But there have been a couple of plays where Dalton's put 2 feet in the ground, jumped as high as he could off of, and then put his arms up and impacted the play. There's been like 3 or 4 different possessions where he's done that. Now, on the flip side of things, now I'm going to do a video of this. When he gets pulled out onto the perimeter, sort of above the break, when guys get him into space, they can really blow by him. And so that's going to be something that teams try to do. And so we'll do another pod sort of on the, or we may hit this in this pod. You were talking about like the defensive flexibility of Redick. I think that for guys like him, for guys like Hayes, Max less so. I think Max can play in a whole bunch of different defensive schemes. But I was excited to see Dalton's ability to, for one, put points on the board when he doesn't have a shot. Like I said, he's shooting 21% from three, and he's only had one single-digit scoring game with the Lakers between Summer League and preseason. And he's getting rebounds. Same thing's true with Max. But that sort of, hey, I can see him being able to do this on defense and help out on the defensive glass as a low man. That's been my most encouraging thing so far.
This is the thing, too, with shooters. The thing with Max is that he's a shooter offensively, and that comes with a reputation of what you can and can't do. But defensively, like how well do you move and how athletic you are. Those aren't concerns that you have with Dalton. He's pretty damn athletic. In fact, one of the comps that we had talked about right after the draft when we started to look at his tape was like, oh, this dude sort of reminds me of like Dan Marley or Tom Chambers or
Garcia. Yeah, brought this up. Yeah, Mike Garcia.
Right. Mm-hmm. But a guy that I likened him to was like Glenn Rice. And it's just like, Glenn Rice was a good athlete. And when you're a shooter and you're a good athlete, there is a certain amount of like movement and verve that you have that if you can translate that to defense, it's going to help you. And the thing about Knecht is that he's not small. I know he's listed at 6'5", but I said this before. It's just like, it's a total disservice to him that he was measured barefoot, and that's fine. Everyone is measured barefoot.
Look, man, either he's 6'5" or Austin is 6'5", but they both can't be 6'5".
That's right. 100%. And so Knecht's a legit 6'7", and when you're big like that, and you've got pretty good size, and you've got better athleticism than you would think on the surface based off of the player archetype he is, then you're going to be able to do some things defensively if you're just committed to doing them. And the thing I've appreciated about Dalton is he's battling out there. He's trying to fight over screens. He's trying to get through. He's trying to contest shots. And because he's got good leaping ability, because he's got a sturdy base, it's hard to like move him off you. And when he's in your airspace and contesting you, he can bother that shot. And the same thing that you're talking about on those low man rotations, if he can get a step or two and then elevate, he's going to be an at or above the rim player defensively. And that's going to be able to impact players, right? And so, yes, is he going to get targeted and be put on an island and be like, okay, we're going to try to isolate you and get by you? Sure. And he's going to give up some drives that way. We've already seen it this preseason and during the summer. But on all of the team defense stuff, I've been encouraged by him attacking his role and what the ask is of him.
Yeah.
And if he can do those things well enough and slide with his guy and then challenge and use his size and use his athleticism, he's going to be at least fairly effective in those scenarios. You're on an island and a guard or a ball handling perimeter guy is attacking you, he's going to give up baskets and he's going to give up drives. That's just how it is. But we talked about this when we mentioned Rui defensively a few pods ago. You need then the team to be in position to help you. And then when you do get that help as a young player like Knecht, he's then going to need to make his rotations and be smart about where he gets to next. And that processing is going to need to improve. But I've been encouraged by how hard he's been fighting and how hard he's been battling defensively. And if this is what his output is going to be on that end, I think that he can battle for a rotation spot.
I want to shift attention to Max, right? We were looking at Dalton through this. Hey, what does he need to improve on to sort of take that next step? And for me, D, there's a checklist for role players that consists of 3 items that if you can do all 3, that you have a pretty good chance of staying on the floor during higher leverage games. Can you defend? Can you make an open catch and shoot 3? And can you get a rebound? And Dalton checks 2 of those boxes with some hope for the third with the low man rotation that we were just talking about. But Max is a guy, and if you think about all our role players over the last couple of years after the 21 team, there were actually very few of them that checked all 3 boxes relative to their position. And so those things, I very much see a role for him on the offensive end, a role for him on the defensive end. The part that jumps off of the screen to me in a negative sense for Max is his passing and sort of his processing speed. Now, I think there's a great argument to be made that reps go a long way to resolving this, right? Like you got to actually get consistent minutes before you get better at doing that sort of thing. But I do think it's a deficit for Max. So do you see that as well? And what are your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree about those 3 things being super valuable, particularly for a role player. And I do agree that his passing is the part of his game that's weakest. There's also an uncertainty with his passing that I think amplifies the weakness within his game. It's one thing if you're an inaccurate passer or you just sort of lack feel for making the right pass or even making the entry pass. Man, there's been so many guys where that like frustrates me most, and players who can make a good entry.
This is sorry, I got to interject here. One of the things I love about talking with you, D, is that you're a man that has a fairly few number of agendas, right? Like there are a few things where I'm like, I know Darius is going to text me about this because he can't freaking shut up about this topic. But like guys who can't make a post-entry pass and just have sort of a awkward passing feel, it's one of the few things that you have this like, this shit drives me crazy attitude toward.
It just bothers me a bunch. Like, man, like you didn't have a tall friend when you were growing up. Like
maybe they were the tall friend. He's 6'6", they're in the NBA.
Maybe. I'm just saying. It's like the one thing. So the one
we
player
had tall friends, D.
I did. My best basketball buddy was like our big dude. And so I played with him in junior high and all through high school. And like you learn how to make an entry pass when you play with a dude who posts up. Anyways, one of the players who frustrated me the most in this regard, who proved truly helpful, and like the Lakers won a championship, if not specifically because of him, but on the route to because of him, was Kareem Rush. There was that game against Portland. Rush hit like a ton of threes, right? It's super important.
Minnesota, I think.
Minnesota, yes, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
He hit a bunch of threes. Super important. Great. We love you for that. And you're a role player too, and so get your role player shine on. But this dude must have missed Shaq 150 times on like the post entries. Like, exactly. He's the biggest target imaginable. How are you going to miss this dude? So
just random strays for Kareem Rush here on the LFR pod.
It just used to bother me. Anyways, one of the things about Max is he knows that this is a weakness within his game. So Taurean Prince did not know that he was a bad passer, but this dude would try passes that he had no business trying on the move. He's like trying touch passes. It's like, what are you doing, bro? You can't make that pass. You're not good at this. This isn't the thing that you should be doing. But Prince didn't matter to him. He's going to make that pass. Max understands that he doesn't have the best feel for it. And so that leads to even more hesitancy around making what should be at times a simple post entry. This is one of the reasons that I've seen LeBron giving Max like super side eye at times is LeBron is just in the post and all you got to do is just throw him an entry pass. And then he's just like, come on. Yeah, like right here. Here's my hand. Just throw it right here. And Max is sort of like ball faking and holding and hesitating a little bit. And it's like, make the damn pass, bro. And then when he does throw it, he throws it too light, or it's like a little bit too much air under the ball. And then the defender's working around and LeBron suddenly making a catch at 20 feet when he was posting up at 15. And you could just tell the way he slaps the ball at the end that he's just like
super annoyed.
Like, damn you, Max. What the hell? And so that passing part of his game is the thing where that's a turnover waiting to happen at times. And if he throws the ball away one too many times or at the wrong part of a game, he will lose the coach's trust in those moments. And that's the part where it's just like, okay, that's like not one of your three pillars that you discussed, but that can undercut the offensive decision-making part of things. And if you can't be trusted to make the right read and make the right pass, then you will struggle some. So let's go to break here. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more Max. Even with that, though, Pete, it's like his skill set fits into closing lineups. His skill set fits in to like, no, you should be playing a real role. You should be at least a 3-shift player and maybe a 4-shift player. And he can snipe minutes away from other players. He could take minutes away from D'Lo. He could take minutes away from Vando. He could take minutes away from Knecht. Even because all of the things that Max has a little bit of his game in, like, oh, a spot up 3 here. I'm picking up full court there. I'm good on the glass. I can do a couple of things in terms of like coming off of a ball screen and snake a ball screen and hit a mid-range jumper. He can do that stuff. He doesn't do it at the level of Knecht in terms of that. And he doesn't rebound as well as like Vando or pressure the ball. But when you've got a little bit of all of those things, it's going to be super helpful to a lot of lineups.
Yeah, that's sort of the Goldilocks principle that a lot of coaches will run into, where it's like, we could put Knecht in the game and our offense will be humming. We could put Vando at that spot and our defense will look great. But could we get something where it's a little less offense than Knecht, but a little more offense than Vando and be able to defend? And that's where Max's most important job is. To me, the story of Max's value to the team starts on the defensive end. He's the guy that you put on Dame and that has those young legs and that great motor and the physical tools to be able to pick him up full court and just be a pain in the ass, right? Like there's a cumulative effect of wearing an opponent down, that having a guy out there who can do that. The 3 guys that we have on the team that sort of fit this are Vando, Cam Reddish, and Max. Max is the only guy of those 3 that can reliably hit a 3 on offense. And so all the passing stuff aside, like just being able to do that while being able to sort of have tools on the ball really helps the rest of the defense go.
The play, that turnover that he forced where he read that the cross screen was coming and he got over this top of the screen and then poked the ball away and it led to Austin getting the steal and then the between the legs pass where Max got a dunk. Those are the plays where it's just like, if you can, his defensive processing speed is like really starting to get there for me. Yeah. And he's really starting to understand how he can leverage his physical tools defensively. You had mentioned this when Max was a rookie, where you were just like, man, if we only had 24-year-old Max Christie, who was stronger. Well, he's not 24 years old yet, Pete, but he's getting closer to being that sort of player. He's not quite as strong yet, and there are still some veteran guards that like get into his body a little bit and make it so that it's just like, well, why are you letting this dude do this to you? You are better than that. But the thing I like most about Max defensively is like those small guards. Max's defensive technique is great against small guards, particularly if he can play against them in a phone booth. The idea that you put out there a few pods ago when we were talking about Max, and you brought up the way that the Sixers were like, oh, okay, you're going to put Max Christie on Tyrese Maxey? Well, then we're just going to run Maxey off of a ton of screens and basically treat him like Allen Iverson. Like, we're going to run him off double wide pin downs and Iverson cuts and all of this stuff where he could just go in straight line and run fast and see if you can keep up.
Putting Tyrese Maxey in a foot race against the opponent's defender, that's good coaching. That's the place that he has his advantage.
But one of the things, and this is a comparison that I've made before on the pod, but one of the players that I think Max should be watching tape on defensively is prime Klay Thompson, because he has a very similar body type and defensive style to Klay. Fundamentally sound, can get in a wide stance, plays with high hands, contests, and isn't going to make a lot of like on-ball mistakes where he doesn't shift his weight so in like that jumpy manner that Cam plays with, right? Cam's got a little bit more chaos to his defensive style, and that chaos can be a negative thing. It can also be a positive thing, and how he gets so many steals and deflections. He just appears out of nowhere, and there's Cam streaking the other way with a pick six. It's just like, well, where'd he come from? It's like, oh, well, he just jumped the passing lane and he was reading that the whole time. Max isn't going to do that, but he is going to keep guys in front. And when he does, because he's got high hands, they try to shoot over the top of him. He's going to challenge that. And that works even better when the guy he's guarding is 6'2" or 6'3", when Max is a legit 6'5", going on 6'6", and has long arms and plays with high hands. It's like he's already in position to do a lot of this stuff. And so to sort of bring it back full circle, players like Max, who are going to be legitimate two-way contributors, and Knecht, who is trying to find his way defensively, but already has some tools and is showing a good amount of compete there. Those are just dudes where it's just like, yes, like if Mike was on the pod right now, he'd be like, give me all the big wings that you could get. Give me wings, give me two-way wings. And the Lakers have had such a deficit of that. But now, and I'm not saying Knecht is going to be there defensively yet, Pete, but Max is 6'5", 6'6". Knecht is 6'6", 6'7". Those were not dudes who are going to compete defensively and at least compete on the backboards. That's not a thing the Lakers have had.
We have those players playing in the exact same positions that Pat Bev was playing, right? The fork and spoon type of thing. It's like, look at how much bigger they are than Pat Bev.
Or even like Alani Walker, who was a very good athlete, but is like 6'3", 6'4", and was like great in transition and everything else. And his defensive range was not even as wide as Max's, right? Like Max can guard up in some instances, especially when teams go small. And so there is just a lot on the table for me to like about those two players specifically. And I think that they can be the sorts of dudes that allow the Lakers to play different lineup types in ways that we talked about needing forwards to do last season. Like, we lamented the fact that Vando was hurt, and then early in the season that Rui was hurt, and you're just like, man, all these dudes who play forward are out. And it's just like, if that happens again this season, then the Lakers are similarly going to be in trouble. Don't get me wrong. But Max and Vando if they're available, they're at least going to give you some semblance of perimeter size that I think is going to be super helpful for this team, both in the short and particularly in the long term because of their age.
And if you don't have those sort of players, it has a distorting effect on the rest of your team. So they're young, but certainly a lot to work with. Lots more to say on both Max and Dalton, but they, I think, are going to be important characters, not only throughout this preseason, but at the beginning of this season in terms of getting off to a good start. I think they're two of the guys that I wanted to see the players who had been in the gym look like two of the guys who've been in the gym the most. A lot of that is conditioning and motor and a level of attentiveness. Dalton especially makes several mistakes that, there's going to be a lot of film, a lot of reps, a lot of work to get better on it. But they both really jumped off the screen to me as hey, we're ready to start this season relative to our experience and our talent. And that's great to see. All right. This has been fun. We will be back tomorrow. Talk More Lakers. Got a game tomorrow. You can join me on playback for that. But until then, you've been listening to Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn. He's double teamed. Just pass out in front. Broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic got it. Magic fires. It's good. The Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds.
Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move. 2, 1.
Miss it.
Unbelievable. For the victory. It's over.
Shot clock now to 5. Bryant.
Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry.
Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me?
2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.